posted a question that I thought was really important. They wanted to know, what are the different dimensions? What are the aspects of them?
Sure. I guess that's interesting because we haven't defined dimensions for quite a while. I talked about the third moving into the fifth kind of thing. So
Right.
let's see if we can define them. Let's decide that they are boxes for the purpose of this discussion. And in each box there are rules and structures as how that box works. In the third dimension, it's very, very dense. And it's physical, as we know, physical. Now, the dimension is not the chair, the cup, the window, the tree outside. That's form. And so form is density, and it participates in your play. It supports your play, your creation, if you would. So the third dimension as a box has a number of structures to it and rules to it. One of the specific things about the third dimension is how we perceive time. If you ask anybody on the street about time, they'll tell you past, present, future, and then you die. The end. That's all there is to it, and it's absolute. Well, in fact, time is not absolute. Time is an application. But in the third dimension, we are too unconscious of being unconscious to basically start to ask different questions. Also in the third dimension is the duality, so right and wrong, the good and bad, the should and shouldn't. And third dimension is conditional. There is nothing unconditional in the third dimension. Now, this is where the fourth dimension kind of comes into play, because the fourth dimension and the third dimension, you're living in both of them at the same time. Depends on your attention point and how you play this out. But in the third dimension, one of the things, this time aspect, is really important, because for the most part we live in the past and we live in the future. We don't live in the present. In third dimension, present time is reactionary, meaning, oh my God, this wasn't supposed to happen. There you are, you're in present time. Also, the creative process when you are in third dimension is such that you are in a protection mode or an avoidance mode to a great extent. This happened to me in my past, and I hope it doesn't happen to me in my future. And so we're constantly holding on to past considerations and projecting them into the future. And then when you step into that future aspect of yourself and you experience what you are holding your attention on, then there's that reactionary present time. Fourth dimension is the space where there are a couple of shifts in the box, and just being real simple. Fourth dimension is about present time only. Past is history that allows you to make a decision in present time to support a future desire or creation. But everything is done in the present moment. Also, in fourth dimension, you have something that you don't have in third dimension. Now remember, I said you live in both at the same time. You have choice. In third dimension, you have reaction. In fourth dimension, you have choice. In that space of choice, you can say, oh, this thing that I just stepped into isn't a good experience. What would I like to do with it? There's your choice. There's another really interesting word in fourth dimension that comes into play, and the word is paradox. In the third dimension, you were bad, you're always going to be bad, you're never going to change. Well, those are pretty strong absolutes, and they don't allow for new circumstances. They don't allow for forgiveness. They don't allow for adjusting or possibilities. Whereas in the fourth dimension, this word paradox, really a big word, because it simply means what was true a minute ago may not be true any longer. And what was false a minute ago may not be false any longer. So with choice and present time and paradox, I have flexibility and possibility to alter a perceived set of truths that I can then apply differently. And it gives you a lot of room to realize maybe what was said wasn't really meant to be said. And it's not about forgiving, it's about oops, didn't really mean that. How do I get out of this? It gives you the flexibility. Also in fourth dimension is unconditional responses, unconditional love, unconditional allowance. So you have, again, more flexibility to allow people to be where they are, accept them for where they are, not good or bad or right or wrong. That's just kind of where they're playing out their game. So again, fourth dimension, you have lots of flexibility, mobility, possibility. The thing about fourth dimension, though, is it's not physical. It is not a physical dimension.
It's not form.
It does have form, but it doesn't have physical density like we say. So form in the fourth dimension would be thought form. Now, have you ever step into a room where two people were just arguing, and it's like, I don't think I want to be here. Form, density, but not physical density at this level. So there is form, but basically present time. Fifth dimension is physical, but fifth dimension operates very differently. There is words like safety or trust don't exist in the fifth dimension. There's nothing unsafe or nothing to distrust. In fifth dimension, you are very much in present time. You are very allowing. You mean you can watch things happen and they're not about you. They're kind of outside watching the theater, if you would. You have choice at a enhanced level where you understand choice in engagement. And you also begin to have experiences in words like respect and dignity, appreciation, co-creation, cooperation. Think about it. If we said, how would you like your life, live your life? Angry, defensive, resistant, or happy, enthusiastic, joyful? There's really no choice in that space. But in that space, you have permission, big word, to allow things to not go into this third dimensional right, wrong, good, bad. So when you begin to become masterful at who are you, how do I wish to experience myself, you begin to learn some of the tools in mastering alchemy. Where do I kind of start and stop? And that's the theater to observe rather than something out there to get me. You begin to find that opportunities are consistently greater and more available than they were when you were rigid, defensive, and worrying about what's around the next corner. So, third, fourth, fifth dimension. Fifth dimension gets really, really interesting because that's just the foundation of fifth dimension. There's a place as density begins to change in fifth dimension, the opportunity to hold out your hand and intend the apple will appear in a fifth dimensional consciousness. Very cool.
Very cool. So just to clarify, a person can be in the third and the fourth dimension simultaneously. Can they be in the third, fourth, and fifth dimension simultaneously?
Oh, great question. No. The reason is, as soon as you're in that fifth dimension, you're in that state of well-being, happy, enthusiastic, respect, dignity, and all of a sudden there's something that causes judgment or reaction. You never get kicked out of the fifth dimension, you just drop into the third dimension. So you can't be in that fifth dimensional space. Anger, rage, resentment doesn't exist. And so you can observe opportunities to be angry, but the minute you step into it, engage with it, you just put yourself right back in the third dimension. Happens instantly. You know, we're not masterful at ourselves. That's what the journey's about. But it's really a good question. Fifth dimension allows you to see all of that.
From a place of neutrality.
From a very much place of neutrality, and you don't engage in reactionary response. But in that fifth dimensional space, you observe and choose and just kind of pace it, watch it, and find the opportunity to uplift or to engage or to simply provide an additional piece of information that would allow a shift in that person who's off balance, angry, or upset, you might be able to provide a different direction.
Yeah, and I like that you said that we're still figuring it out and we're not completely masterful at it. So a few days ago, there's a problem on the website, and before the problem on the website happened, I was in a great space. I was happy. I was going to go to dance class. I was in a great space, and then this thing happened, and I just flipped right into 3rd D, and I was upset, and I wasn't throwing energy. It was all in my space, and then I twisted funny, and I hurt my back, and I couldn't
Right.
go to dance class.
Right.
So I went from the 5th dimension, just like that,
Yeah.
into the 3rd.
Into old pictures, into anxiety,
Yes.
into something's wrong, and body tightens up
It did.
and goes into resistance, and then there's a reaction and a response.
Well, and the key for me is that if I can catch myself in that process of going from the 5th to the 3rd, and I'm getting better at it, I can catch myself faster.
Of course.
However, a few days ago, I didn't. I went all the way down to the bottom. I went into 1st dimension, probably. But for me, if I can catch it faster, then pretty soon, the instant something breaks, I can step back and go back into that neutral place.
Sure, see, that's these words that we play with in Mastering Alchemy.
Right.
When you can begin to build the platform of certain and capable and observing, allowing, and begin to have that as your choice, the ability to not go into reaction and then resentment or fear becomes much more available to you. Now, do you fall out of that, like you're saying?
Yes.
Of course, but can you catch it much quicker and take a breath and step back out and then say, all right, what do I need to do to make this whole?
Oh, well, and what works for me is that if I practice when it doesn't count ahead of time, or if I create a strategy before I get to that place, so even if the strategy is walk outside for a minute, that'll just, for me, switch it and remind myself of the choice of where do I want to be. But for me, I have to have something already in my pocket, so when I get to that place, I don't have to stop and figure it out. It's right there.
Well, this is, again, in 3rd dimension, you're in reaction. You're not in choice, or you're not in awareness. You're not in the paradox of, oh, that's not what it is. I can change that.
Right.
When you begin to be able to hold this awareness that there is choice here, even though I don't like what I'm faced with, what I just fell into, all right, take a breath, present time, how do I choose differently? And there's always a different choice if you can step out of that anxiety or fear that you're in.
Yeah.
So it's a journey, it's a
Yeah.
dance, it's not a instant gratification, but it's something that requires your attention and your intention to choose that different choice.
Yes.
So, good question.